My brother looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't bother coming for Christmas this year, Maya. You'll only make everyone uncomfortable." Those words cut deeper than the winter wind, completely exiling me from my own family. So, there I was on Christmas Eve, sitting alone in my dark apartment, watching the snow fall outside and nursing a cold cup of tea while my family celebrated without me. I thought that being uninvited was the absolute rock bottom of my life, but I was wrong. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed, shattering the silence. It was my mother. The moment I answered, I knew something was terribly wrong. Her voice was violently shaking, completely unrecognizable as she gasped, "Maya, turn on the television right now. Look at what's on the news. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." I'm Maya. I'm 27 years old, and up until that exact moment, I genuinely believed that blood meant everything. But my older brother, Adrian, who is 32 and has spent his entire life acting like the undisputed golden child of the family, had a completely different set of values. We were standing in the hallway of my parents' estate a week before the holidays when he dropped the bomb. He didn't stutter, and he didn't look remorseful. He just casually adjusted his designer watch and told me that his wealthy new in-laws were flying in for Christmas dinner, and having me there would only make everyone uncomfortable. He claimed my modest lifestyle as a freelance graphic designer wouldn't blend well with their high society guests. It was the ultimate calculated insult, wrapped up in false concern for the family's social standing. He even had the audacity to suggest that my presence would bring unnecessary drama to the table. I looked past his shoulder and saw my parents standing in the living room, silently looking away, completely validating his cruelty with their silence. Adrian had always been a master manipulator, weaving complex webs to keep me firmly on the outside of our family's affections, but this was a completely new level of exclusion. I left that day with my chest burning, completely unaware of the terrifying truth he was actually trying to hide from me. The silence inside my tiny apartment on Christmas Eve was absolutely deafening. While the rest of the city was wrapped in warm, festive light and shared laughter, I sat cross-legged on my worn-out sofa, watching the heavy snow cascade past my window pane. The flat screen was turned off, and the only light illuminating the dark room was the harsh, artificial glow emanating from my smartphone screen. Against my own better judgment, I found myself refreshing social media, instantly regretting it as my sister-in-law's latest uploads filled the feed. There they were, captured in flawless high definition, a lavish, brightly lit dinner party inside my parents' dining room. The table was overflowing with gourmet food, expensive crystal, and towering centerpieces, looking like a scene straight out of a luxury home magazine. Adrian stood at the head of the table, raising a crystal glass of champagne, looking every bit the successful, untouchable son my parents always bragged about to their friends. Seeing them smiling, raising toasts, and completely carrying on as if I had never existed, cut straight to my core. I struggled with an overwhelming wave of inadequacy, deeply reflecting on how I had always been the one to quietly support this family through every minor crisis, while Adrian merely manipulated situations to claim the credit. I felt utterly erased, cast aside like an embarrassing secret just to preserve my brother's carefully curated image, completely oblivious to the fact that this hollow perfection was about to shatter. The glowing numbers on my microwave slowly shifted, officially marking the arrival of midnight and the beginning of Christmas Day. Just as a heavy, hollow sigh escaped my lips, the eerie silence of my apartment was violently shattered by the loud, frantic buzzing of my phone. I glanced at the screen, surprised to see my mother's name flashing through the darkness. The moment I pressed answer and brought the receiver to my ear, a cold dread instantly gripped my stomach. Her voice was shaking so violently it was almost completely unrecognizable, reduced to a series of frantic, breathless gasps. "Maya, please tell me you're awake," she sobbed, her panic radiating through the line. "Turn on the television right now. Look at what's happening on the local news channel." My heart pounded against my ribs as I scrambled for the remote control, quickly switching on the local broadcast. The screen flickered to life, showing a chaotic live feed from outside my parents' suburban estate. The peaceful, snow-covered neighborhood was lit up by an aggressive sea of flashing blue and red lights. Multiple emergency vehicles and unmarked black SUVs were completely blocking the driveway I had walked down just a week ago. A massive, bold breaking news banner stretched across the bottom of the screen, revealing an immediate federal raid and sweeping white-collar crime arrests targeting a prominent local consulting firm. My breath caught in my throat as the camera zoomed in closer. The reporter on the screen was shouting over the roar of a hovering police helicopter, and as the pieces began to fall into place, a horrifying clarity washed over me. Adrian hadn't uninvited me from Christmas dinner because my modest life as a graphic designer would make his wealthy guests feel uncomfortable. That entire narrative was a calculated smokescreen. The terrifying truth was that my brother had been using my name, my clean credit history, and my leaked social security number for the past 18 months to establish a complex web of fraudulent shell corporations. Through these dummy entities, he had successfully funneled millions of dollars in illegal, off-the-books investments, leaving a pristine paper trail that led directly to my front door if anything went sideways. He knew that if I sat down at that dinner table and met his new high-society business partners, my sharp eye for detail and casual questions about his consulting work would instantly blow his cover. He had systematically exiled me from the family gathering to keep me completely blind to the fact that he was setting me up to take the fall for his massive financial crimes. But his elaborate house of cards had a fatal flaw. Federal white-collar crime investigators had quietly been tracking his digital footprints and intercepted wire transfers for months. The trap he thought he was building for me had actually been closing around him the entire time, and on Christmas Eve, the authorities finally snapped it shut right in the middle of his lavish, stolen celebration. By 2 a.m., my phone was ringing off the hook with frantic calls from my parents, begging me to come down to the Central Police Station. When I arrived, the pristine facade of our family was entirely gone. My mother was weeping into a tissue, and my father looked 10 years older, his hands shaking as he clutched a coffee cup. The moment they saw me, they didn't ask how I was doing after being excluded. Instead, they immediately began begging me to use my personal savings to help secure a bail bondsman for Adrian. They even went so far as to suggest that I should lie to the federal investigators, claiming I had authorized the creation of those shell companies for the sake of saving the family name. Hearing them protect the golden child who had actively tried to ruin my life was the final straw. Thankfully, I hadn't come alone. I had contacted a trusted corporate defense attorney on the drive over. Standing firmly behind my legal shield, I looked my desperate parents in the eye and flatly refused to be their sacrificial lamb. My lawyer stepped forward and presented the investigators with a pristine, meticulously organized digital archive of my actual design freelance business, my taxes, and my personal bank statements. We proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had absolutely zero knowledge of Adrian's fraudulent activities, completely separating my identity from his crimes and effectively sealing my brother's fate right before their eyes. With my pristine financial records securely in the hands of the authorities, Adrian's elaborate legal defense crumbled into absolute dust within a matter of hours. As the investigation rapidly unfolded over the following days, a delicious twist of situational irony came to light, completely destroying what was left of my brother's arrogant facade. It turned out that the high society, ultra-wealthy in-laws he had been trying so desperately to impress, the very people he uninvited me to accommodate, were not wealthy investors at all. They were actually highly specialized, undercover financial investigators who had targeted his suspicious consulting firm from the very beginning. They had spent months feeding his insatiable ego, playing along with his schemes just to gather enough hard evidence to lock him away for a very long time. In an instant, Adrian lost absolutely everything. His status-obsessed fiancée immediately called off the engagement, deleting every trace of him from her life before his mugshot even hit the morning papers. Because his fraudulent activities had heavily compromised the family business, the federal government moved swiftly, seizing the luxury vehicles, freezing the joint bank accounts, and placing massive liens against my parents' suburban estate to pay back his defrauded victims. The very assets he had tried so cruelly to gatekeep from me were completely liquidated by the courts. He was left with nothing but millions of dollars in unpayable debt, a ruined reputation, and the cold reality of a looming prison sentence. By trying to greedily feed his own ambition at my expense, he had swallowed his own poison pill of justice, realizing too late that his golden child status couldn't save him from the consequences of his actions. Fast forward 3 months later, and my life looks completely unrecognizable compared to that lonely Christmas Eve. I packed up my belongings, completely cut ties with my toxic family members, and relocated to a breathtaking, peaceful coastal town where the air smells of salt water and freedom. Using my newfound independence and peace of mind, I poured all my energy into building my freelance graphic design business, which is now thriving more than ever before. Looking back, I finally realize that being cruelly uninvited from that holiday dinner wasn't a tragedy at all. It was actually the ultimate shield that protected me from complete financial and personal ruin. If I had been at that table, I might have been dragged down with them. Now, I'm incredibly curious about all of you who have listened to my story today. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Have you ever experienced a painful rejection from your own family, only to find out later that it was an absolute blessing in disguise? Please comment your thoughts and stories below, because I read every single one of them. And meanwhile, I am leaving right here on the final screen 2 other incredible stories that are absolute channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you with their twists. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I will see you in the next story.